I think I would go further. In the right
Mhm.
partnership, you get to blossom in ways that you weren't able
Mm.
to before you were with that, before
Of
you were in
course.
that relationship. And I don't just mean romantic partner, like
Yeah.
with the right
Right.
friends, right?
Right.
With the right context, you get to unfurl and open.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, I don't have to shrink. I just get to stay my same size. It's like, no, 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 you
Yeah.
get to get bigger
Right.
because you're with people who want to see
They're
not
gonna
just the
water
you
you.
that you are. They no, they want to see more of you. They want to
Mhm.
see you, the thing that is you grow.
Welcome to Conversations with the Planets with Lori Kaufman and Alicia Seelheiser, a podcast that roots the wisdom of the stars into our lived experiences here on Earth and weaves the power of diverse healing modalities together with astrology. I'm Alicia Seelheiser, an astrologer, herbalist, and witch living in Oregon on Kalapuya land, and I offer astrology consultations and teachings aimed at helping you honor your most authentic self and trust your intuition.
I'm Lori Kaufman, an astrologer, tarot reader, writer, and teacher. I co-lead the Asteroid Special Interest Research Group for NCGR, an astrology organization, and I offer all different sorts of readings, online and in person.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Conversations with the Planets. And today we're going to be continuing our Asteroid series episodes and talking about different goddesses and deities in astrology by talking about Juno and also talking about Hera because she always sneaks into the conversation. And today we have Diana Rose Harper with us, who is just an incredible, thought-provoking astrologer. Um, and yeah, Lori, do you want to share a bit
Yeah,
about what we're talking about today?
yeah. So Diana and I were both at Jason Hawley's event in Santa Fe, and we had a lovely conversation about Juno and our different takes on how she can show up and manifest. So I'm super excited to have you on and to dive deeper into that conversation today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here because Juno is um, a kind of special interest of mine. I won't say that I'm like a full-on, constantly obsessed special interest person when it comes to Juno, but um, several years ago, I think both of you know this, but several years ago, for NORWAC, I actually put together a lecture on Juno, and that sprang very specifically out of my observations in my client practice and also, talking about astrology with my friends,
Mhm.
where the definition of Juno, the asteroid, astrologically speaking, was quite limited. And so
Yeah.
many of my friends and clients are not heterosexual or monogamy normative.
Mm-hmm.
um, and so identifying the expression of the asteroid Juno in a way that was expansive and allowed for
Mhm.
an understanding of her influence beyond heteronormative marriage was really
Yeah.
important for me. And that's just continued to unfurl ever since I did that research and presented that lecture. It's an ongoing thematic in
Mm.
the conversations that I have, and yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's great. So it's deeply
Yeah.
fascinating.
I love that. And I've noticed the same thing. I've made that observation as well, that so many people I know who have a prominent Juno, or Hera, but it's usually Juno, have open relationships or tend to lean towards um, different styles of relationship in general. Anything that's not like considered, quote, normal in our society.
Hmm.
And I think that's really cool to see that thread of Juno, especially because of her myth, her story, and how she can really indicate like being open-minded to
Hmm.
having a different take, a different way of living.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I definitely. Oh no, you go ahead, Diana.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Lori and I will talk a lot about how different like planets or asteroids can show up as either end of an extreme for different people. And so
Hmm.
it is, you know, with
Mhm.
Juno, you may have the more traditional focus of like marriage or partnership and like loyalty to a particular person being very significant for you in your life, but you may also like be on a very different end where like partnership is still so much of a focus, but in a way that's not quite as traditional. And then obviously
Right.
anywhere in between. But um, yeah, I do think that like partnership and ownership do come through so strongly with Juno's significations,
Hmm.
regardless, is a significant focus.
Yeah, I will
Mhm.
say, like, in my research and ongoing engagement, because I have a bit of like devotional engagement with Juno Hera, um, like it's not just through the astrological lens, but a lot of my understanding of her, her influence and her concern, it's not even exclusive to romantic relationships,
Mm.
right?
Right.
Like romantic relationships are part of her space, you could say. But what I've really observed and what I kind of concluded is that it's less about marriage and more about the sort of social contracts that include marriage.
Mhm.
So it's really like the fabric of society, like the intangible
Mm.
structures that are the weaving and maintaining of the social contracts at various levels. So one of the
Right.
things I've observed, it's like, you know, clients will come to me and they'll be talking about maybe something that's going on with their partner, and then they're also having some issues with their boss, and they're also having some issues with a friend. And the thing that actually ties them all together is their Juno, right? Like in all of those relationships, there's something happening where their perspective on how people are supposed to conduct themselves is not shared, and it's creating tension relationally.
Right. Yeah, and I see her so much as like just like your commitments and your loyalty
Hmm.
and just like sticking to what you said you would do
Hmm.
and just kind of keeping like anything you can do to keep a relationship alive of any kind. And yes, that does show up in romantic relationships a lot. And I think people often like compare her almost to like Venus in astrology, especially like signification wise.
Hmm.
But it is really interesting when you kind of open that door up and see her just as like, how are your relationships functioning in general? Or
Hmm.
where are
Well,
relationships important to you?
and
Hmm.
that's where, you know, like Demetra's work in the Asteroid Goddesses book is just so
Mhm.
helpful in expanding out different, like, particularly like feminine gender expressions through the different asteroids and the way that
Right.
Juno like opens up dimensions of relationships that are different than how we approach Venus and how it just like gives
Yeah.
more of like, you know, if you're like looking at feminine energies from like a large die and then like each side has a different dimension and which side are you approaching it from. Juno just adds so much more complexity there, for all of us in that way. And I also think it's interesting, Diana, how you like talk about social contracts as being the integral part of Juno's energy, because I personally, I like Juno's just like floating in my fourth, but I have Hera conjunct my ascendant.
Mhm.
So I do approach this energy more through my relationship with Hera, and my partner and I are like in a very traditional relationship in a lot of ways. Like he is a man, I am a woman. We have a baby. We live together. We're monogamous, but then we're also not married, and we're not married for very intentional reasons. And so it is
Hmm.
much more about that sort of contract that exists
Hmm.
between us, and like what are our commitments to each other if we don't like pay the county we live in $50 to like have a license, right? And like
Hmm.
how do we negotiate our relationship together? Like we just bought a house together, and then we
Hmm.
had to get like particular legal agreements for
Hmm.
like what our co-ownership is. That's very different than the like automatic legal agreements that married couples have. And honestly, I feel like almost everyone, whether you're married or not, should probably come up with your own
Hmm.
particular like we're both on the hook for the mortgage and we can hold each other accountable for that, because like the mortgage company doesn't care whether you're married or not, they just want your interest. But anyway, we had to like form our own like agreement of what that looks like. And I feel like that's a very yeah, it's just there's a lot that can be illuminated when you actually sit down and you explore like why are we in partnership together and what are we doing. for
Mhm.
yourselves as opposed to like what externally society expects on you if you're, married or
Right.
gay or straight or any of these different
So,
areas.
Alicia, that's such an excellent example of both like you're doing an assertion of what you desire. So that's like that Hera on the ascendant, like asteroid Hera on the ascendant, but also the fact that the example that you're sharing is a home and you have Juno in the fourth house
Yeah.
is really hilarious.
True. Yeah.
And it honestly goes really strongly. So one of the things when I was doing my concerted research in 2020, for my 2021 lecture, one of the things that I observed with people who had Juno on the ascendant, on angular generally, ascendant, midheaven, descendant especially, but also a little bit IC, is not that there was a like not that there was like an adherence to like standard issue social expectations of social contracts, but there was actually an invested interest in being an active participant in the creation of the social contract that was
Yeah.
being engaged with. So that's why I emphasize social contract generally versus marriage specifically, because marriage is a specific social contract. So it's part of the social contracts at
Yes.
large. But
Mhm.
it's like, one of the things that I've had, like one of the conversations I've had a few times with people who are just like, I think I want a partner, but these are all the things I don't want. And it's just like, okay, what you're
Mhm.
saying is you don't want a standard issue type of relationship, which means that what you actually need to do is sift through what you want affirmed in a relational dynamic that is inclusive of like merging the intangible components of your life with another person's that has tangible impact. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
So, like Alicia, your example of like, pair bonded, reproducing, but not adhering to the standard issue marriage contract for very like considerate reasons. That is Juno. Like full stop. That's Juno stuff. So I like to joke. It's not a joke. Like Juno is not the asteroid of marriage. Juno is the asteroid of relationship anarchy.
Mm.
And not through the lens of like hierarchical or non-hierarchical. Like there's kind of two different camps with relationship anarchy. There's the like attempting to eliminate hierarchy at all costs. And there's the we get to build the kind of relationship we want. And so when I
Yeah.
say Juno as relationship anarchy, I mean we get to build the kind of relationship that we want, which means being really intentional and constantly engaging with the different kinds of intimacy that exists. Romantic intimacy, sure. But there's also social intimacy, like do your friends know each other? There's
Right.
financial intimacy. Are we in each other's money? There's domestic
Mhm.
intimacy. Do we smell each other poop? Right? There's reproductive intimacy, like actually producing and co-parenting children.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, there's educational intimacy. Are we taking classes together? There's garden intimacy. Are we sharing a plot at the community garden?
Mhm.
There's clothing intimacy. Do we hang out in each other's closets and borrow each other's clothing? Right? There's all of these different kinds of intimacy. And Juno is like, which of these do we want to what degree? To what
Right.
intensity? And what does that mean in terms of our obligations and reciprocities with each other?
Mm-hmm.
So marriage is just like a pre-packaged. It's like going to the store and getting a pre-made, like it's like you're going and buying an already made cake,
Hmm.
basically, versus all of these other forms of relationship. It's like you're figuring out how to bake from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And actually, I've been thinking about that a lot recently. One of my close friends is finalizing a divorce, and she has both Juno and Hera very prominent in her chart. She
Mhm.
has a Hera moon Jupiter conjunction and then Juno on her Venus.
Mm,
And
mm.
they are in a poly relationship. And when she got married, Juno was actually exactly on the MC and Hera was exactly on the IC of the
Oh,
wedding
wow.
chart.
Uh-huh.
And they like for several other reasons. I told her maybe not, but she went through with it and they're going through a divorce now. And we've been having a lot of really big conversations about this like Juno energy because she didn't set a lot of boundaries.
Hmm.
And she kind of like regretted that later and was like, "Oh, I realized all these things that I should have said and spoken up for myself." And I've been working a lot of bachelorette parties
Hmm.
recently, and I've been noticing a theme of like a lot of young women have been reaching out to me recently to work their bachelorette parties, and they all just like it's like none of them really seem like they know what they're doing. They're all kind of
Yeah.
just like, yep, this is the next step. Like, I'm in my
Mhm.
mid 20s. This is what I'm supposed to do. And
It's like following a script.
Hmm.
exactly. And there's been so many times where I leave those parties like, do these people even like their husbands? Like, are they happy? Like, there's so
And
many
do they
questions
understand the like
what they're
financial
doing.
tax implications of moving
Exactly.
forward? Like back to the house
Yeah.
example, you
Hmm.
think like, oh, you get married, you buy a house. But then like when you sign the mortgage, right? You both are individually like responsible for paying that. So if you get in a conflict with your spouse and they leave and they want to screw you over and stop paying the mortgage,
Right.
you are still on the hook for the mortgage. And like
Right.
people will also, take out massive amounts of debt to spite over their spouse. Like there's a lot of really
Hmm.
scary financial tax implications that come with marriage
Yeah.
and a lot of benefits as well. Like you can file jointly on your taxes and save money and then obviously like the commitment of having someone who's there for you for life is a beautiful, beautiful concept. But I feel like people don't, yeah, it's like how many people truly understand what they're getting into when they get married.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Exactly.
and
It's almost like
the unspoken is the scary part because it's like,
right.
what do you truly, Diana, you've been talking so much about desire and like vocalizing your
Hmm.
desires and like being fully aware of what you truly desire and what you like need to be nourished
Hmm.
in life. And
Right.
then finding that and in like all the types of intimacy and partnerships, right? And making sure you have that like a garden of intimate relationships in your
Hmm.
life. And that, yeah, that
Yeah.
can be so much of that Juno energy, but
Yeah.
it can cause a lot of wounding and a lot of harm as well. Like partnering with people
Right.
is dangerous in
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
circumstances.
And
I
it's
love that
almost
you're,
like so many people don't think about that.
no,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
people don't, because the romantic mirage
Right.
means that engaging with the realities and the potentialities feels like a buzzkill and a boner killer, right?
Correct.
But I
Right.
love,
Totally.
like, Alicia, I
Correct.
love that you're bringing up money because, like, in Rome, Juno Moneta was like one of the visages of Juno that was actively a worshipped deity, like,
Right.
specifically in her position as like a goddess of the money bag, basically, like the
Mm,
purse, with this understanding that finances, stable economics, are a crucial component of sustaining culture, right? And in Roman context, like that focus was very much on sustaining the familial stability of Roman families that were producing Roman citizens. So, like the reproduction and creation of Roman citizens. And so that's a huge part of Juno's role in like the Roman Empire's like religious context. But it remains constantly relevant. Like, even just thinking about the discourse that's been happening lately about, you know, it like historically speaking, women were required to be in a relationship with a man in
Right.
order to have like material
A bank account.
security, a bank account, material
Yeah.
security, a house,
yeah.
and the ability to feed children, like all of those sorts of things. That's not necessarily the case in the way that it was historically, but there is this lag of perception and understanding. And so then we have these like 20 somethings thinking that now that they're 25, they should get married. Girl, wait till the other side of your Saturn return if you can.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Lori and I were just talking about that.
like wait,
Yeah.
wait. Like you
I'm
do
always talking about that.
don't have your nodal reversal, progress lunar return, Uranus trine, Neptune sextile, Pluto sextile, and then Saturn return
Right.
be the first few years of your marriage if you can help it.
Right.
Um,
Right.
because like, oh, that's a ringer. Um, but in any case, it's like this, like like women don't necessarily need men in the way that historically we/they did. And so then men have to be wanted instead of needed, and the transition into being wantable is like really sending the men folk for a loop, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
we want to be your friend, which means you have to treat us like person, not
Right.
object that make baby.
Right.
Um, right? But again, it's like that financial security component. Like you can turn to
Hmm.
Juno. Like if you are like a devotional person, you can turn towards Juno as somebody that can like support your efforts to ensure that the local domestic violence shelter has enough money, for example, because Juno and Hera are like I understand them to be the same goddess, different names. Other people have a different experience, but it's like she's somebody who wants culture to be
Mhm.
healthy and social contracts and the actual adherence to the social contract that has been agreed to is
Yeah.
how culture is healthy.
Yeah.
Right.
And you know that loyalty piece was a really big thing that I wanted to talk
Yes.
about today as
Mhm.
well. Um like in the Iliad, Hera is the only god who's always loyal to the Greeks.
Yes.
Like most of the
Yeah.
gods switch sides
Mhm.
throughout the story, and Hera
Hmm.
is loyal.
Staunch.
Um she's
Yeah.
incredibly loyal to Zeus. And there's just so much loyalty that comes through when you're
Mhm.
working with this energy, and like that, even something like for me as I was coming into my Hera awareness, because I always
Era,
feel like
era.
asteroids will present themselves to you as you
Mhm.
start to live their stories.
Mhm.
Like I
Mhm.
discovered I had Ceres conjunct my ascendant right after I became an herbalist. I discovered I
Mhm.
had Adonis conjunct my ascendant when I was a ski bum, which is like Adonis as a ski bum is a very fun mental
Mhm.
exploration as an aside. And then, I attended Demetra's asteroids retreat. She gave us a printout of like all 27,000 named asteroids and where they are in her birth charts. And I somehow missed that I have Hera conjunct the ascendant at that, because my ascendant is 28 Libra and I have Hera at 0 Scorpio. So I like
uh,
didn't look across the signs, but that's like a 2-degree orb. And then I met my partner, got like very committed with him, started living out my Hera story. And then when Lori and I went to Greece with Jason Hawley,
mhm.
and he printed out some of the asteroids would be because we were visiting sacred sites. We visited Argos and like this ancient sacred site to Hera. And so he printed Hera in our chart and I saw her on my ascendant. And I was like, okay, now I'm aware of this
Mhm.
Hera consciousness, right? And as that was unfolding, I also was visited by my partner's ancestors in like this very intense message where they kind of like smacked me over the head and was like, you have to be loyal. Like, if you're going to be with this guy, like loyalty. And like, I usually don't have that strong of communication from spirits like that. So it was a
Mhm.
very clear, like, loyalty, right? And so
Mhm.
that is definitely something. When you're looking at how you partner with people, if you have a strong Hera or Juno, like loyalty may be particularly important, but also like working with his energy, as you said, Diana, it's like loyalty to the social contract, or what did we agree on.
Mhm.
But then that becomes sticky when we're not sure, like, what even is marriage, what are you agreeing
Right.
to when you marry someone.
Right.
And then yeah, like so much of the like unpleasant, it's like so awkward to talk about this stuff, so a lot of people just don't, and so then
Right.
then you
You have
don't
to be
know what you have
fearless.
fidelity to.
You
Yeah.
have to be fearless when it comes to this kind of stuff. Like one of the things that
Right.
I've observed both in my own life and also in the lives of clients and other people in my life is like the more you cultivate your ability to be really internally honest and appropriately externally honest, the better everything becomes because it means you're reducing the amount of both intentional and unintentional dishonesty. So, not lies, like outright intentional dishonesty, I guess is a lie, right? But the more you can eliminate dishonesty, the better it's like the cleaner your social fabric becomes,
Right.
you know? And
Yeah.
when you have like a cleaner social fabric, you also have a better way of seeing where there might need to be repairs and then can honestly do the repair instead of being like blah 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 blah, but this is not really my fault because blah blah blah. It's like
Right.
no, 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 you're implicated in the experience and we're all in the same fabric and one thread doing a weird thing affects the entire fabric and so let's just,
Yeah.
attend to that. Um
Mhm.
like I think that is one of the things like one of the things that people often struggle with when it comes to like the Juno Hera complex is like, she is depicted as this like mean shrewish wife in so
Yep.
many different places when it's actually like she's doing her hardest to actually be in integrity in a situation
Right.
where the other member of the agreement is not upholding his side of the agreement and because
Right.
it like those stories are often told through a patriarchal
Yeah.
perspective, right? It's like he's the one
Always.
who has the right to do what he wants If his wife is mad, oh, poor wife, mad, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, no, no, no. If this was actually equal, because like Zeus and Hera being married mythologically speaking, like this is one of the things that Demetra talks about in Asteroid Goddesses is,
Mhm.
it's like Hera is a sky goddess, Zeus is a sky god. Whenever syncretism happens, you make them be married. But when
Right.
you also do that in a way that is an imposition of like a patriarchal orientation that dismisses the importance of upholding your side of the treaty, then you
Yes.
end up with an angry, local goddess who's like, bro, I married you. What the hell?
Right. Well, and I think that's so important too to like lean into that because I think it's this is the one difference I feel like I ever see between Juno and Hera is it does feel like sometimes the Greeks were like meaner or like a little bit more pointing fingers, a little bit more patriarchal,
Mhm.
whereas like Juno felt a little bit more
She's more honored. She's more
honored.
elevated
Hmm.
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
Roman
Yeah,
perspective.
right.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, she was definitely put on a pedestal a bit more, whereas Hera was like more like feral, I guess
Hmm.
is the word. Like she was just seen more that way. But I always point out like these stories were written and carried on by men. They were not carried on by the grandmas around the fire who were telling the stories in the first place. So it is important to remember like this is how the rich men of power
Hmm.
decided to keep these stories along. And then that's the other thing I wanted to say with what you were saying. I have Juno in my first house.
Hmm.
She's not, she's like 15 degrees from my ascendant and then like 10 degrees from my Mars. But she's still there.
Hmm.
And I kind of see her like she's somebody I think about sometimes as like how I'm loyal to myself or
Hmm.
like does that
Yes.
make sense? Like
Absolutely.
'cause
Yep.
yeah, I've never really been a people pleaser. I've always been
Hmm.
pretty good at setting boundaries, but I've also lived alone for my entire like adulthood. I've lived like alone for 10 years, and even before that when I did have some roommates, they were never around, and I've always like spent a lot of time in solitude or like giving myself space and asking myself questions. Is this what you want to do right now? Like,
Hmm.
do you care right now? Things like that. And I think if you have a prominent Juno or especially Juno in the first, like it's so important to be loyal to yourself and to check in because the moments in my life that I have felt the most imbalanced or like in pain or when things start going wrong, it's like when I've tried to fit myself into the hole that somebody else tried to give me.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
specifically, like, my parents are like trying to have a 9 to 5 job or like things like that
Hmm.
as examples. Like, you can't do it. Like, you have
No.
to be true to yourself.
I'm reminded of like one of the avenues into the interpretation of asteroids, which you guys have probably talked about on the podcast already, which is looking at the discovery charts
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
new celestial bodies. And one of
Hmm.
my favorite things about Juno's discovery chart is that you know, shocking to maybe some people, instead of being like in Libra, she was in Aries when she was
Aries.
discovered. Right. And
Hmm.
so that to me highlights how important self self authenticity and self assertion is when
Yeah.
navigating Juno issues. Like not in
Yeah.
an asshole way, but in a like, I know
Yeah.
what is true for me. I know what I need. I know my perspective. I know what I think is um like conducive to the kind of relationships that I would like to be in and the kind of person that I would like to be. And so I want to be really forthright about that so that way I can be in contexts that are
Yeah.
supportive of my authenticity. Like,
Yeah.
that's even one way to think about whenever there's relationship issues that people are facing, and I'm talking with them about their Juno, right? It's like,
Hmm.
well, if you were really honest with the person that you're in conflict with, that this is a value of yours, how would that change the dynamic? And usually people are like, oh my God, I'm allowed to say that?
I
Yeah.
know.
And it's
Yeah.
like, not only are you allowed to, it literally might be the only
Right.
thing that gets
Right.
you
You
to the
need
place you
to.
want to
Yeah,
be
it's a
relationally.
responsibility.
It's
Yeah.
actually, yeah, it's a
Right.
responsibility. If you are not present in your relationship, you're not in a relationship.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Right.
that's part of like Juno is it's like putting on your big kid pants, honestly,
Oh
to be
yeah.
in Juno energy.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
these are like, we keep going back to marriage,
Hmm.
which I'll
It's
also say
it's one of the ripest examples, I
it
think.
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
I mean,
And it's very
it's a
present.
contract. It's
And I
Yeah.
will
seventh
also
house.
say when Lori and I got to Argos to like visit Hera's temple, the hotel we were staying at had a wedding when we got there. So
Yeah.
it
That's
was so
amazing.
perfect. The
That's
field was
amazing.
alive. But
Yeah.
um now I'm distracted about what I was going to say about marriage. But that's a serious thing, right? When you marry
Right.
someone, like you're putting on your big kid pants, even if you're 22, right? Like
Yeah.
you're making a very serious commitment to someone. And then, regardless, it's like there's so many opportunities for us to all think about our social contracts with other people in different creative ways. And I actually think that's a really cool thing about being alive right now at this time. It's like also
Yeah.
like, yes, it's end times and there's a lot of really scary, awful things. And there's a lot of like oppression and harm and fear facing a lot of people, especially, queer people and folks of color, as we try to navigate different relationships. And like, I even know that being unmarried, like, I am less protected in my relationship in certain ways than if I just like paid the county the $50, right? But there is also so many different people forming really unique ways of being in relationship with each other. And like you already spoke to, Diana, the fact that like women don't have to like marry a man or join the church in order to like be protected and survive. Like there's a
Mhm.
lot more opportunities, particularly for us, but then it's like for everyone that just opens up so much.
Mhm.
But it's like you have to speak it into existence. You have to think it into existence and really like be aware of what you truly want and
Mhm.
be very serious and mature about like what's possible and
Mhm.
what responsibilities are necessary in order to make what you want happen.
Mhm.
Right.
And like Juno
Yeah.
can help you with that so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is actually reminding me. So, um, I'm so glad that we're having this conversation today because today is the day when the moon conjoins Juno in Aquarius because Juno's currently in Aquarius. And I actually relate Juno to
I was just gonna
Aquarius.
bring that up
Yeah, yeah,
too.
yeah. And so Alicia, what you're saying around like, the maturity and the responsibility and like, being able to think long term about the consequences of a commitment, like
Yes.
what that means and what that looks like that's Saturn, that is Saturn
Right.
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, I think Juno is actually a really excellent like expression of Juno or of Saturn plus Venus, right?
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and, the reason why I relate her with Aquarius, there's a couple of reasons. One of them is that in the framework that I have, like the understanding I have of each of the zodiac signs as literal places, Aquarius is the, like, as fixed air that's not going anywhere. Aquarius is the candy coating of atmosphere that protects our planet,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
That is some air that we don't want going anywhere. Please do not
Mm-hmm.
leave. Do not yeet into the void of space. We need you, right? Um, and it is a candy coating of air that allows for life to happen, right? And there's a limit, right? Like as humans, even just going up to the top of like Mount Everest or something, like we can't handle that level of the air. We need to be
Mm-hmm.
closer to the planet, right? We need the thicker air in order, we need that blankie, right?
Right.
Um, but also because, Aquarius is not just the physical atmosphere, it's the intangible atmosphere that is worldview. And worldview, there's so many ways to get into worldview to really understand what it is, but it's how you understand the world to work. It's your interface with reality. It's like how you, like your settings about how reality realities. That's your worldview. And your
Right.
worldview is deeply informed by the culture that you grow up within Juno, the parents who raise you, Juno, right? Like the people that you relate with like as you walk through the world, Juno, right? How your nervous system responds to all of that, because the
Right.
nervous system is also Aquarius, according to
Right.
me, and other people agree with me, but that's how I think about it, right? Um, and then, when you are interfacing on a micro level with somebody else's worldview, like that relationship where conflicts arise are where there are non-match points in your worldviews.
Hmm.
And that's Juno.
Hmm.
And the
Yeah,
more clarity you have around those similarities and differences of worldview, and the more you accept that differences exist and then can acknowledge them and address them, the more clearly you can have very coherent agreements with the people that you're in relationship with. The
right,
stronger the cultural framework you're in becomes, the stronger the social fabric becomes.
right. Well, yeah, and I think it was Manilius who originally placed Juno with Aquarius, and
Oh,
made
really?
the
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know this.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah. I have the book somewhere.
Yeah.
I looked into this at one point,
Yeah.
but yeah, he originally like way back then way before the asteroid, he was
Hmm.
like, yeah, Juno is Aquarius.
Yeah.
And I really love that thought as well, especially like, I mean, there's a few things I want to say. I mean, the difference between the fifth and the seventh house feel like part of this as well. Like the
Yeah.
seventh
Hmm.
house being contracts of all kinds. It's not
Hmm.
just your partner, it's not just marriage. And as a Cancer rising, I have a Saturn ruled
Hmm.
seventh house. So having that like Saturnian energy feels right. I mean, it's the theme of Monday, right? Like it
Yeah.
feels right to be in that seventh house space. And I have an Aquarius stellium, so I'm always thinking about how Aquarius energy plays out. But it's literally like the sun is Leo and the detriment is Aquarius because like it is a sign of community, collective. How can we all work together? And the sun, of course, isn't happy there. So Juno, of course, like feels that same energy, which is so funny to me that they like that her symbol in the Roman days was the peacock
Hmm.
because that feels very opposite. It feels very showy. It feels very Leo when it's like that didn't feel quite right to her. And she felt like she cared way more about just like the collective, how everyone gets along. It's like very like Aquarius, Libra type
Hmm.
of energy. It's that air.
Hmm.
But it's the idea of trying to keep everybody in line in a way, like just how can we all work together so that everybody is happy and nobody is self-sacrificing or like leaning too deeply into like codependency
Hmm.
or resentment or
Right.
any of the
And like
negatives.
those issues, like the resentment, the bitterness, all of that stuff, like they
Mhm.
all like have their origin in
Yeah.
an actual or perceived breach of social contract.
Right.
Right. So like even just thinking
Right.
about like the beleaguered mother who has sacrificed everything for her children and her husband and doesn't feel like she's gotten anything in return, like that frequently happens in situations where it's expected that she's going to self-sacrifice and therefore does not receive acknowledgement or
Right.
appreciation for
Hmm.
having done so. And then, we have there's so many women who like they hit their midlife crisis. Like the masculine, like the man midlife crisis stereotype is, um get a divorce, get a 22-year-old girlfriend, get a Miata, and
Right.
pretend like
By
you
car.
are a child again, basically. And like the woman's midlife crisis is frequently, fuck all of you. I've given you everything and you've given me nothing in return.
Mhm.
Like, eat, pray, love, goodbye. Right.
Yeah.
Um, but there's something in there of just like the giving and giving and giving and not receiving and the bitterness of not receiving when you've been giving because there's no reciprocity because underneath that expectation of self-martyrdom is
Right.
eventually I'll get rewarded.
Hmm.
Right.
But if you don't get acknowledged, if you're not perceived as giving so much, if you're giving more than people actually even want you to, if people take for granted the domestic services that you're providing, all of that stuff, you're not going to
Yeah.
get rewarded.
Right.
And then
Yeah,
there's a collapse because
of
the social
course.
contract hasn't been met. Like even
Right.
if you couldn't say it, that's the expectation is that I will get acknowledgement and reward for all my self-sacrifice. Eventually it surfaces and relationships fall apart as a consequence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then even then, everybody points fingers and says, "Oh, look at this crazy woman.
Yes.
She,
Yep.
what
Yeah.
a shame she went mad, right?"
Yeah.
And that ties all the way back to what you were saying, Diana, of like Juno's roots in reinforcing family units that
Yeah.
produce Roman citizens, right? And so
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
like, what are we doing here and who's benefiting from it?
Hmm.
Right.
And like, while we do live in a time where we can create different types of family structures, and there are a lot more possibilities for women in particular, we haven't like reshaped society enough to not just accidentally fall back into those same
Hmm.
railroad tracks. And I feel
Right.
like that is so common, particularly in like more traditional family structures where like so much still ends up just on the woman and on the
Yes.
mother. Um, and then that goes back to like having to put your big kid pants on, and it's like, yeah, we can think about our relationship in a different lens than like being, citizen producing people for the state, but like who's going to do the dishes?
Hmm.
Right, like we
Right.
still like someone has to do the dishes, and it just so much of that unseen, undervalued domestic work. I mean, Dr. Angela Davis talks about how through industrialization, um traditional women's work lost economic value, and actually in like
Yeah. Yeah.
pre-industrialized United States, women's tasks had more of an economic value in how they contributed through the home.
Laundresses, for example.
Yeah, and like textile,
Gosh.
like making
Yep.
textiles, and like there was actually more economic power that women
Yep.
held because of how they participated in society. And then like textiles, all of those things industrialized, men's work
And then
ends up
and then they
getting,
got globalized.
yeah.
So the factories that were doing industrial textile production got ported into different countries. And so here in the United States, for example, a lot of women's like economic power that even remained post-industrialization was still in industrial textile factories. Like unionized garment workers were a thing here in the United States until globalization made textile and garment production much cheaper in other places where most of the workers are exploited women. Um,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah,
I,
no,
I
No.
that's
get on one about the
fascinating.
textiles. I
It's
get on
Yeah.
one about the textiles.
yeah, and it's
As
just
you
such
should.
a good example of like the undervalued,
Right.
like I cannot deduct the fact that I'm breastfeeding on my taxes. Like the economic
No.
value that I provide by breastfeeding like a human who will like someday like be a doctor or drive a trash truck or like do something that like society, like we do need to continue to have people exist if we want to, be
Mhm.
cared for, right? So it's like everyone benefits
Right.
from people having children, and like the economic value, like how much formula costs, the amount of time and effort and energy that I put into like to
Right.
create milk to feed a human, and like that is completely unseen, that is
Yeah.
completely unvalued, and that
It's
is only one.
natural.
Yeah, like it
Right.
just, you're sitting there, you're relaxing, you're not, like my baby does
Yeah.
not like it when I talk. like
And there's
I
all
cannot.
different kinds of agony that the body goes through, can go
Yeah,
through as part of breastfeeding.
absolutely.
Like
Right.
Yeah. I
Right.
had a
learning
very
processes.
smooth experience, but a lot of people get like really, really painful things that happen with their
Mhm.
nipples. Mastitis is really common. People have even like naturopath knows people who have lost breasts to mastitis.
That's
So like
wild.
breastfeeding is extreme, and it is
Yeah.
not valued, and it is also like
Mhm.
very of the nature of Juno and Hera. And I like that was
Yeah.
actually, now we're kind of just,
She's a protector of women,
yeah,
Right.
wives, people in childbirth, mothers. Like
yes,
those
yes.
are parts of her jobs, right?
Right.
And like we can see, it's like Hera's role as someone who was prayed to bring sailors home safely, right? Like we can think of that as just like, oh yeah, our husbands. No, 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 no. Those are our sons. Those are our children.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's at least my gnosis. It's like it's not about
Yeah.
getting the husbands home, it's about getting the children home.
Yeah.
Right.
And like the wisdom, because it's like there's different mother goddesses, right? There's
Hmm.
like there's Demeter and Ceres,
Right.
who we've talked about. It would be great to talk about again now that I am a mother,
Mhm.
because I'm sure I have much more
Yeah.
that I could say about it. But then when you come to like Hera, Juno, that's a different mothering.
Yeah.
And so, and again, that's why the
Yeah.
asteroids create, like some people are going to be more that Demeter mother, some people may be more that Hera mother, some people may be both, right? But it
Mhm.
creates more like opportunities for
Dynamism.
understanding your relationship to
Mhm.
motherhood. And so like that in general also, like just to make it really explicit, like Juno and Hera absolutely can speak to like how you were mothered, how you relate to like how you mother if you are a mother, how you care for people if in general, breastfeeding, I like really do think that Hera and Juno are like, if you're trying to make sense out of breastfeeding in your life, they are like the deities to look to for that. One story that I'll share here with that, when Lori and I were in Greece, our guide, who was like this cute, spunky, like local Greek woman, who was like
Mhm.
a feminist studies scholar and was like perfect for the type of group that we were like doing. And when we drove to Argos, like the homeland of Hera, she shared this myth of, because most of Zeus's children were not born to Hera, right? Which is
Right.
also part of the
Right.
understanding of Hera and motherhood. But Hephaestus was.
Mhm.
And the our guide told us a story of Hera, breastfeeding baby Hephaestus, and then she looks down and sees that he is crippled, and she's disgusted by him and rips him off her breast and like throws him into the cosmos, and the milk that splattered from her breast creates the Milky Way,
Mhm.
right? And so it's like mother's milk is like such a Hera, such a Juno energy. And then also, then later Hephaestus makes a throne for, the queen of the gods, his mother, to sit on, and then she gets imprisoned on the throne and he traps her there.
Mhm.
So it can also speak to like unhealthy mothering
Mhm.
dynamics. But there's just so much there to be able to explore around motherhood and Hera and breastfeeding
Mhm.
and just
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, this is interesting too. So one of the things, like I picked up this book when it came out last year, which was like literally, I think just over a year ago. This is Matrimony by Stephen Jenkinson, who also wrote Die Wise and some other one that I can't remember the name of right now. I'm not that far into it because it's so rich. It's like a very, 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 very rich text. Like every sentence is like a 5 paragraph essay kind of text.
Yeah.
Um, but I was revisiting it specifically looking for some of the things that I had been like so stoked on when I was, reading it for like first began reading it. And, one of the things he's talking about in this text is how matrimony is a place of the creation of culture. It's like where culture happens is in the experience of matrimony. So not
Mhm.
matrimony as in the wedding, but matrimony as in the act of people coming together to create family and from that creation of family being a contributor to the culture that they live within, right?
Yes.
And he talks about how, like I'm like keeping a running tally of the different ways he's defining matrimony throughout the text. Um, and one of the ways he defines it is that it's the flesh and bone of love in the world.
Mm.
That's what matrimony is. And so when you're talking about like the physicality of motherhood, Alicia, right? And like the physicality of like
Right.
breastfeeding, and then I'm thinking about, Juno as like, what are the contracts, like what are the sacred rites that we go through in
Yeah.
order to be people who are then creating culture, microculture as part of macro culture. Like
Yeah.
that's the fleshness and the boneness of making a society, TM,
Hmm.
right? Um,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and like the oh, this is actually reminding me like one of the things that I wanted to talk about too is how like the idea of marriage itself, like marriage specifically as a contract.
Right.
My uncle, when I was a teenager, and he got married to my aunt, he was talking about marriage having like kind of three there's kind of three contracts in one that happens when you get married. There's
Mm.
the legal binding, so you're married in the eyes of the state. There's the social binding, so getting married in the eyes of like your family and friends. And then there's the spiritual binding. You're
Hmm.
getting married, you're joining in the eyes of God and the eyes of divinity. And that like kind of tripartite quality of the marriage contract, I think is one of those things that doesn't really get fully acknowledged, and especially like in the eyes of friends and family. This book, the Stephen Jenkinson book, is really talking about how like, a marriage, like a matrimony, like a true matrimony of some kind, it's not just the joining of two people, it's the joining of two people's social spheres,
Right.
right? And like it used to mean something to bear witness to a union. And that if you were a witness to someone's marriage, you were also then implicated in helping them to uphold their vows,
Right.
which I don't know. I've been to lots of, I haven't been to that many weddings, but I've been to some weddings and I know that I am not, like, if I went to any of those people that got married and was like, how are your vows going? They'd be like, girl, what? because that's not the
Yeah.
Yeah,
expectation
that's yeah.
socially,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's so
Yeah.
evocative too, because I like just nuclear family structures are like breeding grounds for
Fucked.
abuse. They're breeding grounds for like really toxic relation dynamics that can show up because that's the opposite of what you're saying, right? We don't
Yeah.
have external people holding us accountable for
Right.
how we show up. It's like everyone's just in their
Or
home.
or if there's external accountability, it's to keep you in line, and usually it's to keep
Yeah.
the woman in line.
Yeah.
Right.
Right? It's
That's what
almost
I was gonna
always,
say.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost always in favor of the patriarchal man, even if the
Yes.
man is the one that's being a problem. The woman
Yeah.
is counseled to endure versus the man being like
Correct.
taken out and like beat up by his buddies in order to get to like act right or
Yeah.
whatever,
Right.
right?
Yeah, I was recently listening to something and they said if marriage was good for women, they would be trying to ban it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And
Um, yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and just kind of looping back on like just like the unseen aspects of like so much of these Juno, like so much of what like Juno brings through of
Hmm.
like because I was talking about that with like breastfeeding being undervalued. We were talking about that with like the loss of the economic value that like female and like women's domestic labor has in society, but I feel
Right.
like Juno can speak to so much of that of like needing to hold everything together,
Yeah.
and like the pressure that gets
The
put on people.
stress.
Yeah, and
Yes.
how, and then like we were talking about that like traditional midlife crisis of like finally feeling really undervalued and really underappreciated. And it's like
Yeah.
again, it's like making things explicit earlier on, like actually knowing your desires and like knowing what you need, and being able to speak that, like that's
Mhm.
part of what Juno also like invites us to do, right?
And being empowered to assert your boundaries. It's
Yeah.
one
Right.
thing to
Right.
know, like, I will not live in a house with an angry man.
Right.
It's another thing to actually be able to take action when you realize the man you're living with is an angry man.
Yeah.
Yes. Correct.
Which, again, money, Juno Moneta, becomes part of
Right.
that story.
Right. Well,
Yes.
it's yeah, and that's something that like, I've been thinking a lot about the Leo Aquarius axis, especially recently with Pluto moving in.
Mhm.
The eclipses
And
coming.
yeah, Pluto's coming for my sun. And actually this Juno moon conjunction is on my sun. It's at 7 degrees. So
Oh, hello.
yeah, hello. It's
Cute.
it's right there.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking a lot about how by the end of Pluto in Aquarius, it's a 20-year cycle, so of course a lot is going to happen and a lot has already changed and has already happened. But I've been thinking about like, what are the positives and the negatives of each sign or like, how they can like manifest on the two extremes. And I was thinking that Leo, the negative extreme is a king. It's like a bad dictator. It's
A
like
tyrant.
a tyrant. It's somebody
Mhm.
who's like taking over and being really incredibly like unfair.
Mhm.
And that opposite reaction you get from Aquarius is riots. It's
Mhm.
fighting. It's people coming together. It's fighting for a cause kind of thing. And that tends to be a little more how like I see Palace like fighting for a cause, who
Mhm.
I also have at 5 Aquarius, so
Mhm. Uh-huh.
she's showing up here
It
too.
tracks.
Yeah. Um, but it's like, yeah, I think by the end of this transit, like when we look back on history, Pluto in Aquarius has always shown up as revolutions or like a downfall of something that wasn't working. And so with Juno being there right now, it's like, or Juno's energy being tied to Aquarius in general, it's like, well, how can you stand up for yourself? Because you're not going to get peace without the riot. You're
Mhm.
not going to be able to create the environment you want unless you set the boundaries and
Mhm.
you speak up for yourself and you do the thing you need to do and say the thing you need to say. And
And
it,
doing it braided with others,
right, right.
right?
You
Like
don't
Mm-hmm.
have to do it
yeah.
alone.
You can't do it alone.
Well, you
I
can't.
think
That's
that's the thing.
true.
When we're talking especially about like like broader change, like
Well, yeah,
collective
on larger term
can't
scale,
do it on, but
obviously, you can't
even
do alone.
I think even doing it on a personal scale, like
Hmm.
even if you're the one that's
Yeah,
having the conversation with the angry man in your house, like
right,
you having the sensation of empowerment to be able to say to that angry man, get out of my house. I don't want an angry man in my house, or
right.
whatever that line might be for you. Um, like you don't get to that conclusion and the ability to assert your boundary without support.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like
That
usually you need to talk it through with a friend before you
yeah,
actually say it.
friends, therapists,
Community.
educators, like even if you're just like reading books or following creators who are talking about this kind of thing,
Mhm.
seeing other people do a similar thing and being inspired by them, like
Hmm.
you might be the one that's like doing the action and maybe you're doing the action by yourself, right?
Yeah.
But getting to the point of doing the action is nearly never a solo project.
Right.
And you
Right.
can literally call on Juno and Hera as
Yes.
well to like guide you and hold you and protect you through this entire process. Like
Yeah.
even like just a prayer that I do almost every day is like I'll envision my ancestors around me in a
Hmm.
circle and like ask my kindly and well ancestors to be with me, guide me, and protect me. May I like feel them. And then, especially since getting pregnant, I've been praying to Artemis, Demeter,
Hmm.
and Hera every day
Hmm.
as well for me and my baby in particular, because all three of those deities are very strong protectors of mothers and
Hmm.
children.
Hmm.
And then I call on Mary, like
Hmm.
the like Our Lady, which is, I would love to get into like how you got to calling Juno Our Lady as well. But like Mary, I even feel like there's an overlapping energy between like the mother of Jesus, Mary, and Juno and Hera, and like this ultimate like compassionate loving mothering energy. And so then when you have to go talk to the angry man in your house, you can be held by
Hmm.
Juno and held by Hera and guided and like
Yeah.
have their power moving through you and doing
Hmm.
what you need to like protect your kids or protect
So
yourself.
Yeah.
actually, yeah, I have something interesting to say about that. I was writing about this morning, so it's funny that
Mm.
this is kind of full circling. Um, but I've been writing poetry recently, because I finished the encyclopedia and I'm
Hmm.
kind of just in limbo waiting for it to be published, be out in the world. But while I was writing it, I was feeling really powerless, basically. Like I felt like all of the goddesses or any kind of feminine deities had nothing but tragic stories. It was just like everything was just, it was making me really upset. But
Hmm.
I had to keep their stories the way they are because it's an encyclopedia. It was a
Right.
reference book. I couldn't, I felt powerless to do anything. But it felt really important to me that I still somehow gave them a voice. And I started having dreams that I was going to write a book of poetry of retellings that could be fiction, where I
Hmm.
could let the goddess speak and say what they would have wanted to say, basically from what I wrote in this book. And this morning I wrote a poem about Isis,
Mm. Hmm.
who quite literally became Mary because the Christianization of everything
Hmm.
basically just slapped a picture of Mary onto Isis and called it a
Hmm.
day.
Hmm.
But Isis's name translates into throne. And in some cultures, they're not actually sure if Isis ended up being conflated into Juno.
Oh,
And
interesting.
or in some of the other goddesses too, like Isis didn't have a one-to-one ratio. But it is interesting when you look at the name translations because like Juno literally means queen of the god and Isis was throne. And so like they both had this really similar line and Isis was the most obvious example of like a deity literally just being erased in real time and
Hmm.
becoming something else. Um, but yeah, I was writing about that this morning and just thinking about how like that's that's the starkest example basically, but there's so many examples of like women just being erased or like all of that energy. But like yeah, looping back to Mary, like she is all of these goddesses in a
Hmm.
way. Like that was like Christianity, I guess, like the Christianization of everything, that was their way
The
of
goddess
Hmm.
lives on
handling
through
her.
Mary. Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly, but only through
100%.
Mary.
Yeah.
But they had to keep the goddess. People weren't going to accept their
Right.
what they
Ex-
were selling without some form
Yeah.
of a goddess. So
Yep.
And it,
Did not want a religion of just dude.
no
yeah,
one wants that.
Like,
no. Well, the dudes probably want that.
yeah, and then we get Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
We were already kind of seeing that.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it is interesting. Like the goddess has been and tried again to like diminish her and to silence her, but she always still finds a way to like sneak out a bit.
And I've been reading Untie the Strong Woman by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And
Mhm.
for anyone that this is exciting, as we're like talking about this, I highly encourage you go read that book because it is all about Mary and particularly like the Virgin of Guadalupe Mary and how
Mhm.
connected she is to like Mexican goddess roots, but just like
Yeah.
exploring so many different sides of Mary and the goddess. And it's a beautiful book. So just
Mhm.
to shout that out. But Diana, I am curious how you came to call Juno Our Lady.
That is so for me it's not how do I put this? It is very common for me to refer to any goddess through
Oh.
Our Lady. So it's almost like it's like an honorific, and it's not necessarily just tied to the like Catholic variants of Mary that exist. Because we even see this with some of the epithets of, you know, like Venus or whatever, where like there are consistent repeated epithets across goddesses that functionally is just like lady or our lady. Like
Mm-hmm.
Freya
Yeah.
means
Yeah.
lady.
Right,
Right.
right.
And like it's really funny. I learned this recently where it's like um in Nordic spaces at one point like wives were called House Freya. So it's like your
Hmm.
house goddess
Yeah.
basically, but
Mm.
husbands were just like boy. Like whatever the word was basically just like dude. But
Yeah.
wives were goddesses that lived in your house.
I love
Yeah.
Which I
that.
thought was very cute.
I love that.
Yeah.
Um
The Norse are
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, it's really good. But yeah, it's like so for example, it's like I call Saturn Our Lady of Time.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
just we're talking about Juno, we're talking about a goddess, we're going to talk about one of our ladies today.
Yeah.
I love that.
There's like a meme waiting to happen of like, and these are my ladies, right? Like
Yeah.
All the asteroid goddesses.
yeah,
My
exactly.
ladies. I love them.
Yeah.
I love that.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
Um, what came through with me too when you're talking about the goddess of the house is like I mean also right now we have as we record this, right? There's the moon, Juno, and Pluto all
Mhm.
like conjunct. And so it's like
Yep.
power dynamics. I feel like that's been woven into this whole conversation. But
Mhm.
it's like there's also a place where you can like really claim a lot of power through the home. And
Mhm.
I even witnessed this like when I lived in Chile and my partner at the time who was Chilean, like his family was like just a very traditional like housewife dad works type of family structure, and the way that his mom exerted so much power and influence through the house, right? Like she didn't
Mm.
have much power influence when she left the house, but in the home that was like her domain and her place to hold power.
Mm.
And that can be very of the nature of Juno and Hera, and then also like claiming our power back through the home and through domestic work,
Right.
which I feel like that's a big part of where I'm living out my Hera now because I'm like essentially a stay-at-home mom. Like I do still do a little bit with my astrology and business, but I'm like caring for a small human and like unloading the dishwasher all the time, right? And like especially now we have this whole like movement of trad wives,
Mhm.
and like that is terrifying to me, but there's so
Most of it
much
is most of it is fetish content, but yeah.
good. Okay.
Very performative.
Yeah.
Because it's also like there's just so much power that can also be gained from like choosing to be a stay-at-home mom or to stay-at-home parent, like choosing to invest time into like raising healthy children and like
Yeah.
resilient, strong, like cared for children. Because so many parents right now, it feels like are having kids like as part of like the cog in the machine, right? And so
Hmm.
it's like to actually be
Right.
able to be present with your children, like being able to keep house and like claiming power through that can like very much be a Juno Hera thing as well.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's also there's absolutely privilege there as well, that like economically it's very hard for a lot of people to like stay home. Like we do need, most people do need to be a two income household at this point
Right.
too. So then there's also conversations about that, and the way that like our economy is set up to like really suppress the Juno Hera. Like no one has time to be at home and unload their dishes and like hang out with
Hmm.
their kids. Like no one
Hmm.
has time for that either. So there's like that issue as well.
Yeah, it turns into like a really toxic soup. And again, it weakens the social fabric,
Mm-hmm.
which,
Right.
again, it's like Juno and Hera are invested in the social fabric being strong and strong enough to raise healthy children,
Yeah.
right? Like, the discourse around like matriarchy is functionally a discourse around like what is the kind of social fabric that actually ensures everyone gets their needs met consistently, right? And like, what are the agreements that have to be in place in order to ensure that happens?
Right.
And I'm actually something you were saying about like the power in the house and the power in the household and like trad wives and like all of this stuff. It was reminding me of the work of this person, Gabrielle Stanley Blair, who wrote this book a while ago called Ejaculate Responsibly. And
Mm.
she like a lot of her orientation is like the abortion issue is not a women issue, it's an ejaculator's issue. And if men ejaculated responsibly, we would have way fewer children in situations that are not ideal for them. We would have less unwanted children. It would also actively prevent abortions. Um, and part of her orientation too is that any person, any gestationally capable person, has a like knows whether or not a given pregnancy should be brought into the world,
Mm-hmm.
right? That the child of that pregnancy should be brought into the world. And if it was truly a choice, if the power to choose to reproduce was truly, fully, openly an option for every person who is gestationally capable at the moment that they realize that they're pregnant, then we would only have children born into situations where they are truly wanted and can truly be supported.
Mm-hmm.
And that would create such a richly like strong and powerful social fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's,
But then even beyond that, it's like even people who want children, like have to save up so much money at this point. Like medically,
Right.
I'm on Medicaid, and so I paid nothing to give
Right.
birth, which is astounding how good
Mhm.
Medicaid actually is. But I have like friends who got like $8,000 C-section bills from the hospital. I've seen
Right.
like
And
nightmare.
imagine a society where it's a genuine choice
Hmm.
whether or not you bring a child into the world and it's genuinely supported in the ways that allow your parents,
Yeah.
like the
Like
gestational
paid
person,
leave, like
to
right.
good
like
health care.
like
Like,
even just imagine it's like excellent healthcare, but also a socioeconomic system where paid leave is irrelevant because you're going to be taken care of regardless.
mm-hmm.
Right.
Extended family, it's very hard to
Like
have a
extended
baby with
family.
just two people, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
villages, the
Yeah,
recreation
literally.
of
Like it,
healthy village.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Right. And
Yeah.
there's so much of that that has just been lost in translation.
Mhm.
And well, I mean, we could talk all day about how society suppresses everything,
Mhm.
mostly the goddess, but including everything else, and
Mhm.
pushes
Hmm.
us into these
Yeah, and
holds
this
of
actually
force.
this brings up something that I think might be interesting for people to consider, which is, how is it that your Juno placement, wherever Juno is in your own chart,
Hmm.
whatever planets Juno is in aspect with, whatever house she's in, all of that, like where in your life could you be asserting more willingness and
Hmm.
effort into building a world at whatever level is available to you, even if it's just literally with yourself or with your besties or with you and your dog, whatever, like actually contributing to social contracting and
Hmm.
adherence to social contracting that is actively supportive of well-being.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, the world building, which has come up a few times with some of your points,
Mhm.
Diana, with just like
Yeah.
the way that like just micro relationships even
Yeah.
like, as
Well,
above,
it's
so
very
below,
Aquarius.
as
Yeah.
below, so above, right? And so the
That's
way
where the
we
practice
practice,
happens.
yeah, the
Right.
way we
Yeah.
practice being in a relationship with each other does actually ripple out and matter.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and then, Juno is the heavenly consort of Jupiter, right? Hera of Zeus, who is like the world building planet, the
Mhm.
planet of creation. And so it like there's so much potential right there, right?
Mhm.
With like
Mhm.
how do
Right.
we build worlds in relation with each other? I've talked about that with my mom friends of like raising children as world building, right? Like a
Hmm.
very, very intense world building, but it's like any creative project can be world building. Any relationship can be world building. So,
Yeah, I really like the
Yes.
lens of culture making that
mm,
Stephen Jenkinson
Hmm.
brings forward because I think sometimes world building can feel too big.
mm-hmm,
Worldview
Yeah.
can feel like a really big task that it's just you like fabricating an entirely new reality out of nothing. But culture
Hmm.
making, it's just like, oh yeah, I can participate in culture. I can toss
mm-hmm.
some, lactobacillus into this, whatever, right? It's like I can bring yogurt to the function. Culture jokes. I'll start a sauerkraut, whatever. Um,
Right.
but it's like if you are creating culture, that is functional, that is world building, but world building feels like the Jupiter. That's the top down,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas culture making, that feels like the Juno. That's like starting at home and going
Mm-hmm.
out,
Yeah, it's the
Hmm.
right?
root
Like I'm
stuff.
reminded of like Amish friendship bread. Did you guys ever get looped into an Amish friendship bread situation? So it's
No.
basically a sweet sourdough starter. It's delicious. But once you get an Amish friendship bread, like basically every week or so, you're getting like four more starters or 10 more starters that you need to distribute, which is why it's called friendship bread, because the idea is that you're baking bread, but you're also making starters to give to people so they can bake bread, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
That's culture making.
Right.
What's the metaphorical
Yeah.
application that you can have in your own life of how you are
Yeah.
doing, like cultivating something in yourself, cultivating something in your domestic experience, cultivating something in your most immediate relationships, and then sharing that. And not in a like, I'm going to post something on Instagram to inspire people kind of way, but in a like, this is going to alter how I interact with my local barista kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
is how I'm going to like talk to the neighbor who I see constantly doing this thing in their yard. Like, how is that
Hmm.
shifting for culture?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like that.
Mhm. Like the
Um,
active participation.
right.
Yeah.
Dana, where do you have Juno?
I have Juno and Scorpio, early Scorpio. Um, it's in a pretty tight sextile with my ascendant in Capricorn.
Mm.
A pretty tight, I mean, so ascendant, descendant axis. Um, and then in a little bit wider orb of a trine with my Jupiter in Cancer.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I like
Beautiful
that.
Juno, Jupiter trine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I forget and then I think about it and I'm like, oh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
No.
Yeah.
That makes me think of like when we were in Greece, Jason Holly was talking about like Hera and Zeus when they first got together, making love for 200 years
Yeah.
and like
Hmm.
hills blooming and wildflowers. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's like Juno trine Jupiter and Cancer.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't say more, but yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
and that also, that
That's
can really
cute.
be something to explore with your Juno placement too, is like
Mhm.
romance, right? Like we
Yeah.
have been talking about like marriage and contracts, but like romance is part of that, right? And I'm glad we
Yeah.
Yeah.
haven't been talking too much about it because I feel like you can get stuck in maybe like
Mhm.
marriage romance
Yeah.
simplicity, but like it is also still worth mentioning, like the type of romance that you enjoy, how much or how little, like all of those different things and how you relate to romantic intimacy and love can definitely, like your Juno placement can illuminate around that.
There's something about it's so easy to get into the like have you talked about what you actually want and what your boundaries are and what you won't stand for? Like what are the things that are going to make you resentful and can you talk about that? It's easy to go down that pathway with
Hmm.
Juno, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, the affirmative components are also really important. So it's like,
Right.
what do you want to receive?
Yes.
What do you want to give? What do you want to experience whenever you are inside it's like there's like the prerequisite is the safety creation of the agreements of the relationship. And
Yeah.
then once you get the prerequisite taken care of, what are you doing when you're relaxed within
Hmm.
that container, that containment, that like,
Right.
when you're in the hammock of the social contract, so to speak, what are you doing in the
Yeah.
hammock?
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I've been thinking about this a lot lately too, but like so many people are so quick to say what they don't want,
Mhm.
but not a whole lot of people actually know what they do want.
It's much more vulnerable to say what you do want
For
Hmm.
sure. And
because
I
when
think,
you're literally pushing away when you say you don't want.
yeah, right,
But you're
exactly.
inviting in when you say you do want. So it's
Right.
literally more vulnerable to say, I want
Yeah,
this.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think there's also kind of an aspect of a lot of people don't want to jinx it, or they
Hmm.
don't want to say something too soon, or feel like they like have to now go for it because they've said it out loud or whatever. But I do think like so many people avoid
Hmm.
saying what they do like or
I,
what they do want.
I think
And
it's
it's so
important to create
important.
a distinction here. A desire is not
Hmm.
a contract.
For
Mm-hmm.
sure. Yeah. Right. And
But then you can
it's
have contracts that nourish your desires or
Yes.
that inhibit them.
Yes.
right. But if you're constantly like, let's say, telling the universe, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like this, well, it's just guessing. It doesn't know what to give you or show you more of. It's just, in fact, it's probably going to give you more of what you don't like because you're focused on what you don't like. And so when you're able to be a bit more clear and say, like, oh, I really like these things, even if it's something small, even if it's something very like, it doesn't, you
Yeah.
don't have to start big, but it's so important to get really clear on that. And I think, like, going back to the societal examples, we live in such a negative society. People are often complaining. And there's something so beautiful about being like, oh no, I actually really like this, or I really enjoy this. I want more of that. Being able
Mhm.
to ask and like stand up for those things.
I'm reminded of how important positive reinforcement is for behavior change,
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
right? And like positive reinforcement is, in a large majority of circumstances, much, much, much more successful than punishment or shame is, like negative
Mm-hmm.
reinforcement or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, so there is something here too of how, if you're navigating relational tension or conflict somewhere and you can identify that there is something Juno happening in there, maybe you're
Hmm.
working on trying to get at like what is the core underlying worldview differential that means we keep having this kind of argument or whatever. Do that. Definitely still do that work, but then also remind yourself of why you're even in relationship with whoever it is,
Yeah.
whatever that kind of
Right.
relationship is, right? It's like, well, I love working at this company for these reasons. I like my boss for these reasons. Um, my best friend is like always late, but I do really love XYZ. I'm the late friend in this situation, right? Or it's like with a partnership, like if you're in a domestic partnership and you just like you feel like you're slamming your head against the wall because they never put the dishes away and you keep
Right.
asking them, they keep being like, how can I help? And you're like, please put the fucking dishes away, right? Um, they're not doing it. Well, it's like, what else are they doing? Right?
Right.
Yes, a hundred
Like how
percent.
else are they contributing? How are they showing up?
Hmm.
One thing that I think can be really interesting too is to see where there's differentials of appreciation, because there's differentials of awareness of actions being taken, right? So if someone never knows that you're doing the thing, they're
Yeah.
never going to appreciate you for doing the thing.
Which goes
You're
back to
Right.
the
noticing it.
unseen labor that
Yeah.
we've
Right.
been talking about, right?
Yeah. There's something about the importance of visibility.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like part of making the invisible visible is looking.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 Even when it's uncomfortable, right? Which when we get
Especially.
into our social dynamics and
Mhm.
just going with
Mhm.
the flow, a lot of times there can be uncomfortable things there because a lot of us have inherited really wounded relational dynamics, like
Mhm.
Right.
culturally, the
Yes.
relational dynamics that are like pushed on us are
Mhm.
toxic.
Mhm.
A lot of us grew up in families that weren't able to really like model the best ways to be together, so there's just so many
Mhm.
ways where we're hobbling along with these wounded things. And so then, yeah, it makes sense to not want to look. Um, and also just to hold the space that, like, again, like Pluto right now, but like trauma can come up with a lot of this too. Like there can be
Mhm.
really, really heavy,
Mhm.
deep, wounded, painful things. And, um, being like gentle and patient with yourself, as Diana mentioned, getting like therapists and peer support, right? There's like professionals that can help you like hold you through things like that. But it's like when you're working with these really difficult Juno, like relational dynamics, like honoring and these are intergenerational things that we've
Mhm.
inherited, right? But now we're
Right.
like choosing how we move forward and what we like bring forward. And that's part of that, like, world
Right.
building, culture building is like, okay, well, I got this, what do I want to see for the future, right?
Mhm.
And how we
Right.
show up with each other.
Right. And that is,
Yeah.
to go back to like like making sure you're also looking for the good things. It's like
Hmm.
if you're culture making, you don't want to throw out the entire starter. Like, do you need to
Right.
start the starter from scratch? Like, can you? Like, no. It's like, what are the parts you're bringing with
Yeah.
and reaffirming through the choices that you're making, right? It's like,
Right.
in the concept of world building, it's like if this was a fantasy novel, you could construct an entire new language just for that world that you've created, but the novel itself is still going to have to be in a language that other people can read,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, that's a good
So,
metaphor.
Mhm.
yeah, you can't discard all of it and start from
Yeah.
scratch, actually. That would be a new
Yeah.
Big Bang, frankly.
Yeah. Well, and there's like so much about like Juno and Hera and nourishment,
Mhm.
particularly like with the association
Hmm.
with like breastfeeding and nourishing, but then in general, like what are we all metaphorically nourishing, or how do we need to be
Mhm.
nourished? And then even with like the culture making, like culture jokes that you've been making, like if
Mhm.
you're trying to get your microbiome back,
Yeah.
if you have like a candida overgrowth or something, like you can't just kill off. I mean, I guess you could like antibiotics if you have to, but like what you want to do is you want to change your habits and feed the good stuff. And so the
Yeah.
good stuff comes in and like keeps the bad stuff at bay, right? And so like with
Yeah.
candida, that's eating less sugar and less carbs, and then like maybe like taking a good prebiotic and probiotic that's like feeding your healthy gut flora. So then you're building up. So it's like how, when we're trying to change imbalances or wounded things, like where do you need the nourishment and the
Mhm.
support to allow for those shifts? And then like
Mhm.
trusting that some of those shifts will also like if you know what are your desires are and you're honoring that, like a lot of that's going to happen like subconsciously even too. Like it's not
Right.
Mhm.
all just like muscling our way into like a different social contract, but
Mhm.
you need the
Yeah.
nourishment.
Right. And like that's one of the
Right.
things too is like understanding that there are a lot of things that change just because you've like added the missing nutrients, like the
Mm,
micronutrients, whatever, like both literally and
Right.
metaphorically.
Right.
Like, on days that I forget to take my B vitamins, which is most days, but on days when I remember to take my B vitamins, totally different day.
hmm.
Yeah.
Totally different day. And all I did was add a vitamin,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think there's something to the utility of gentleness and
Mm,
patience, right? Like the time
Yeah.
component. Like again, thinking about Hera and Aquarius and time, right? Tradition takes time to change, culture takes time to change.
Yeah.
Um, both internally and externally, these things take time. And just
Right.
because you aren't seeing immediate alterations doesn't mean no alteration is happening.
yeah.
Yeah. Right. And also just the reminder that if things aren't mutual, you don't have to stay. Like, no
Right.
matter what amount of time you wait or try to shift things, like, we don't live in a society where you have to be trapped anymore.
Hmm.
And so I think remembering that is really important too. Like,
Hmm.
it's a choice, and that's really special. And
Hmm.
there's so much to be said about that, but just like making sure that you're not settling, that you're knowing your worth, that you're not self-betraying, that you're not people pleasing, all of that.
Hmm. There's something about affirming, right? There's the
Right.
it's like I do not want to lose myself. Okay.
Yeah.
I do want to be fully present in my relationships.
Right. It's the positive versus the negative
Hmm.
again.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
affirming, like I am going to show up as fully as
Hmm.
I can, and I'm going to work
Hmm.
on becoming all the more able to show up fully and lovingly in my relationships. And I'm going to prioritize relationships where I get to show up and I'm
Yes.
not being asked to be a simulacra of myself in order to be present.
Yeah. And it's the Aquarius energy of like needing the authenticity.
Hmm.
If somebody is not understanding, then it's not fun
It's
to be around that person. It's
right.
exhausting.
It's there's also something of just like letting incompatibility be incompatibility versus a
Hmm.
Yeah.
personal offense. I think this is one of the
Yeah.
things that can
That's a
come
good point.
with like when you have like a really firm or a more firm grasp on like your orientation to the world, your values, your preferences, your needs, your gifts, like what you want to be contributing, what you want to be receiving. Like when you have more of a grasp on that, it can make it a lot easier to not take personally if somebody doesn't want to be in it with you or they don't fit well within what you're trying to do. You can just be like, "Oh, this just this is just a mismatch."
Hmm.
Right.
And just that's it.
Right. And
Hmm.
that's okay.
That's okay. I don't expect you just because I decided I'm ready for a boyfriend or a boss or whatever. That doesn't mean you need that specific person to
Right.
be that person, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And being open to that type of shift in those relationships,
Hmm. Yeah.
especially after like you've deemed somebody worthy or, because Aquarius is still a fixed energy.
Hmm.
There is still like I've chosen you. You're in my life forever now.
Right. I think this is one of the places where, so back in 2020, 2021, when I was doing the Juno lecture research, one of the
Hmm.
things that I observed is that people who have Juno in the first house, like you, Lori,
Yeah.
tend to be the most hesitant to get married.
Yep.
Not because there's not a belief in marriage, but
Yeah.
because there's an understanding of the kinds of changes that people go through year on year on year, and not feeling like you can make a
Yes.
promise now that you in 50 years will want to adhere to. And so the thing that I
Yeah.
have found with like Juno and the first people is like an orientation towards an orientation towards vow making, like oath making, that is inclusive of acknowledging the inevitability of the change of both people involved
Yes.
and like has like overt openings for checking in about the reassertion of that vow
Hmm.
regularly. So instead of saying forever, we're together forever, it's, we are committed to growing with each other for as long as we are contributing to each other's growth.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, marriage is fine because it's
Right.
not making a promise on behalf of someone you haven't met yet because
Right.
that person won't exist until you're 75.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I think like when I started to learn and understand my chart in my early 20s, I remember all of this really clicking and making sense
Hmm.
because my family has, like, everybody in my family has gotten married around 21,
Mm,
maybe
mm, mm,
22 at the oldest,
hmm.
and sometimes younger. And I almost got engaged when I was 22 and remembered thinking like, no, like this is not what I want.
Yeah.
And just having this major, like, oh my God, what am, no. And leaving that situation and then feeling like everybody was kind of turning on me and then not really understanding, like, why did I feel so against this? And, it's been 10 plus years later, I can look back and be like, oh, I would have been some like trad wife on a military base with multiple kids, which is what he wanted.
Hmm. And
That
then
wasn't me.
you feel a lot more stuck, right? Like as
Totally.
time
And
unfolds, right?
yeah, and I think like maybe that's just my, I have all that Aquarius in the eighth house, but like a fear of getting stuck. And, my Aquarius Saturn also rules my seventh, but like huge fear of stuckness.
Hmm.
And like, it's just like, well, what if I choose the wrong thing?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then but it's an oath, and I don't want to break an oath
That's the
because I
thing. It's
take
taking
that
the
so
oath really,
seriously.
really seriously.
Hmm.
I take
And
it so seriously, but I change so much so
mhm,
frequently. And then I started to learn and understand astrology more so in my like early 20s right after that. And I remember thinking like, oh, I have a Saturn ruled seventh house. Like Scorpio is my fifth house. Mars is on my ascendant. I'm ruled by my Aries moon. I change my mind every day.
mhm.
Like it all
Hmm.
started to just make sense in that Juno first house. But it's like, yeah, if you have these placements, even though it can, it feels lonely sometimes, there is some of that sadness, but it's also like a fear of getting into the wrong thing and overly committing. It's so strong.
Mhm.
Hmm.
And you just have to be so sure that you're not
There's
doing
something,
the
yeah, there's
something
something
that's,
in here
yeah.
too about like self-trust, like what helps you to
Yes.
trust yourself to navigate change.
Right.
And when I think about Juno too, and like that need for being authentically present in your relationships, as well
Hmm.
as the process, it's like when you're part of social fabric, you're negotiating your needs and your authenticity within a field of other people's needs and authenticities,
Hmm.
which means that nobody gets to be the solitary tyrant who's determining what everybody is doing all the time. Like nobody gets to be the leader all the time,
Right.
right? Like that's part of
Hmm.
how coherent social fabric actually works, is that there's multiple voices are allowed to participate, multiple perspectives are brought in. Some amount of coherence and cohesion will form with time, but there's going to be people who disagree. And, how do you
Right.
negotiate that? How do you navigate that? How do you understand that you are influencing other people all the time and other people are influencing you all the time,
Hmm.
and none of us are existing in vacuums getting to do whatever the hell we want? Like,
Yeah.
there's like the development of the trust that you can be in ongoing dynamics of interreliance and interdependence without losing what's actually you, because what's actually you gets to actually flourish more in relation with others, because humans are inherently social animals.
Yeah.
Hmm. Uh-huh. And
Yeah.
it's, that matriarchal orientation as well of like really like understanding, as you're saying, like we're not in vacuums. We have to rely on each other and interact with each other, and particularly orienting around the most vulnerable of our society and
Mhm.
what they need the most, right? Like
Yeah.
as a
Mhm.
mother with a 6-month-old baby, that really changes how I move through the world to make sure
Yeah.
that this like very tiny fragile human is kept safe, right? And you can extrapolate
Right.
that to like multiple different vulnerable classes of people. But it's like that cliche that is a cliche for a reason of like if you want to go far, go alone, or if you want to go fast, go alone, right? Everything's in Aries right now. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? And
Yeah.
it's like you can accomplish so much more when you're linked together, and like we
Mhm.
are linked together. Like I hate when people are like, you're born alone, you die alone, we're all alone. And I'm like, you literally, as someone who has given
It's
birth,
the
you
myth
are
of
not born
separation.
alone.
Yeah, it's the myth of
Yeah.
separation, right?
Yeah.
Like I call it the myth of separation, which is a fun foundational mythology that
Yeah.
undergirds imperialism, colonialism, capitalism, and patriarchy, right?
Mhm.
Like the myth of separation, and it also undergirds like scientific materialist objectification of the world, right? This
Mhm.
Mhm.
belief of aloneness, which is actually just, I think, a trauma response that's been dressed up as like a refined and very academic, philosophical like perspective, blah blah blah. Like I'm so cool, I don't believe in connection. And it's just like, no,
Mhm.
that's just trauma.
Right.
That's just
Yeah.
cultural
Right.
trauma that's generations, you're like generations old,
Right.
like multiple generations.
Yeah.
Like I'm so sorry you believe that you're alone because you are so numbed out to the inherent interconnected reality that we exist within and that humans have been participating in since time immemorial, frankly.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and it's interesting kind of going back to the Juno first house specifically,
Mhm.
because I always think it's so interesting to have Juno in the first house because Demetra placed her as like kind of naturally fitting into the seventh. And having that like opposite energy, like I love the idea of partnership. Like I'm always all about having partners for different things, and I will call them partners. Like I do partner acrobatics. Like I'm a
Hmm.
performer.
Yeah.
Like I love working with other people and having like sacred partnerships in all kinds of ways. But I don't like the idea of like just having one, like having to choose one person to
Yeah.
Because
be like
it's literally unnatural.
right.
Hmm.
And it
It
feels
is,
so
yeah.
wrong.
Yeah, it
And
is a
Yeah.
contemporary construct that is useful for the aims of capitalism and patriarchy
Right.
to put all of your social, financial, spiritual, and emotional eggs into the basket of one other person.
mhm.
Right. Right. And
Yeah.
everybody that like kind of that I see as some sort of partner in any project I'm working on, like I like give them that title and that feels really important to me to see
Mhm.
them as like some sort of partnership. I
Yep.
love the idea of partnership. But it's like I think with marriage, that's always been the one thing that I don't like how society places it because
Yes.
like my acro partner, I get to decide what that
Yeah.
relationship is like because not everybody in the world has that. Like
Yeah.
there's no like rules or regulation on my like 20 partners that I have for different
Yeah.
things, but like marriage feels a lot more like stricter or like
It's very
serious or
external.
it's like
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a
you
lot
have to
more
like follow
controlled.
these rules. Yeah, exactly. And it's like that's always been the one thing that like you said, I'm not against it, but it has to feel very right.
You
It
have to
has
be
to be in
careful. Yeah. Because even
exactly.
just to continue the fun facts of like legal things that happen when you're married, like
Hmm.
any child born to a woman who is married is legally the child of her spouse, like even if they're not biologically their child, right?
That's wild.
Oh,
Like, is that
That's
it?
like it's an ownership dynamic.
Yeah, and like
yeah.
that's so much a relic of like when women were literally property of
Hmm.
their husbands, right?
Right.
And it's like, do you want to give someone the legal power to like be the parent of any children you have ever, forever? Like maybe you do,
Right.
but it's like,
Right.
are you aware that's the power that you're even like giving when you're
Hmm.
entering into this
Right.
contract,
Hmm.
right?
Well, and we're not taught what those contracts actually say.
No,
No.
exactly. And there's nowhere to like marriage contract, quick, easy TLDR, like
No,
Right.
I mean, because it's like it's not just the marriage contract, it's the legal code that's grown up around
Yes.
yeah,
married people's
Yes.
business and the processes of divorce and other things like that. So much of it on a legal level is about property, right?
yes.
So it's like I know that there are people who will have commitment ceremonies, so they will cover the social and spiritual sides of marriage, but keep the legal part out of their business, just
Yes.
because
Hmm.
the legal code like unfurls all of these sorts of quite nefarious manipulations of private relations.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's where my partner and I are at this point is like we're moving towards like constructing our own vows with each other and having
Hmm.
some sort of like hand fasting ritual where we
Yeah.
like commit our devotion to each other. But again, like Multnomah County does not need our $50. Like we do not.
Yeah. Wait, you're in
So
Multnomah County, Alicia?
yeah.
I didn't know that. I'm in Portland.
You are?
Yeah.
You used to be in LA?
Yeah. I moved here in 2024, like late
Oh,
2024.
Oh,
wow.
hilarious.
That's cool.
I grew up in Corvallis, so I've always
Oh,
lived. been
Nice.
in the Willamette Valley. That's yeah. Wow.
Cool.
Okay, we'll have to like chat more off
Yeah,
the
yeah,
recording
yeah.
about
I
that.
just like realized like I just had this realization inside a podcast episode. Okay, hi.
I love that. But anyway, like that's part of the social dynamic is like
Yeah.
Multnomah County then is part
Mhm.
of your private relation,
Yes.
like you're saying, Diana. It's like,
Mhm.
do you want Multnomah County to have something to say
And
about
it's
how
not
you
just
are?
Multnomah County, it's also then the state of Oregon and the nation state of the United States of America.
Yeah,
And
as a
then
taxable entity now.
yes. And
Right.
then the relations, like the international relations that the United States of America has, will influence how your relationship is interpreted legally in other countries.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, there's all sorts of bananas things that happen on the legal level that honestly make my brains want to fall out. But yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
Um,
Well, and they
which
make
is
it
yeah.
so complicated
Hmm.
for a reason.
Hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of social control dynamics going on. But see, that's where like the power can also be claimed back by
Hmm.
people, choosing to not legally get
Mhm.
married or choosing to foster their own intentional relationships or
Hmm.
choosing to like be really present with their children, being able to
Choosing
have
to
the choice around
prioritize.
having children. Yeah.
Yeah, choosing to prioritize your
Yeah.
values to the greatest extent possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
which you're always going to hit a limit. Saturn's always going to be there, right?
Yeah.
And why that limit is there, where that limit comes from, like all of those sorts of things. There's going to be so many different reasons why
Right.
there's a limitation to the full embodiment of your actual values and dreams. But that doesn't mean that you can't embody your values and dreams as fully as possible in the
Mm-hmm.
meantime.
It's
Well,
beautiful.
even just like opening that up, embodying everything as
Mhm.
fully as possible. Like, I always think too about the myth of her getting so angry that she created Aries.
Yeah.
And like,
Parthenogenesis. Hello.
yeah. And like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I have Juno with my Mars and my moon and Mars in mutual reception. So like, I don't know. I love that myth so much.
Mhm.
But the idea of getting so angry that you're like, war, like
Yeah.
Aries. But I love the idea of just being able to like fully express
Mhm.
your anger, like not holding it
Yes.
back. Like even if you do get called all kinds of names or be, considered the crazy, jealous, whatever, all the names that Hera gets called, like you still can express in such a beautiful way. Like
Mhm.
there's something so honorable about
There's
like
some
not holding yourself back from self-expression or bodily
honesty.
expression because if you hold back, you manifest health issues, you manifest
Mm-hmm.
so many things inside the body and stagnancy and like it's so bad for you. And I love this idea of just like let it out, like just express your anger, just be.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something about how there is always a cost to intense emotion.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And whether the cost is immediate because you express it, or whether it's a cost that accrues interest because you keep it inside, thinking that you can just keep it inside forever, it will still come out, but it'll just come out with interest.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I
Right.
think yeah, like there's something there. And then in my
Yeah.
Patreon live chat last month, the April one, we were talking a lot about the Aries pile up, including talking a lot about rage and anger. There were a lot of Taurus risings being like, "Why do I have so many angers happening?" And it's like, "Oh, well, that Aries 12th house has things to say. Hello." Um,
Yeah.
but one of the metaphors that came up for me while we were having that conversation was the metaphor of glass blowing, where there's certain kinds of
Hmm.
glass blowing, like glasswork, that you can do on your own, but you still need a lot of safety equipment. You need a lot of training. And ideally, you're not doing it in like a studio space where you're literally the only person there because it's very dangerous. But if you're
Yeah.
doing like more elaborate glass blowing that like involves like the big furnaces and stuff like that, you
Hmm.
can't it is literally physically impossible to do that kind of glass blowing work solo. And even if you could do it solo, it would be an extraordinarily bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so this has a metaphorical application to how we're navigating things like rage, right?
Yeah.
Like rage is one of those emotions that, especially when you don't have good training on how to handle that emotion, it's
Yes.
dangerous to try to just do it by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But when you have support, when you have help, when you have people to listen and mirror back, when you can take a moment, kind of like that scene in Midsummer when she's just like wailing and there's a whole bunch of women like wailing with her, all of a
Yeah.
sudden, rage can become something that creates like the emotional equivalent of a blown glass sculpture.
Yeah.
Mm, that's really
I
beautifully
love
said.
that.
Yeah.
And yeah, me and Alicia are both in Aries perfection years right now. So,
I'm like, wow, loud
Spicy.
Aries.
yeah.
Yeah.
We've been
Yeah, and
talking
then
a lot
the
about this
big
Aries pile
pileup
up.
happened while we were in our 12th house perfection months as well. So
Oof.
it's been a wild ride.
Super
Hot
fun.
ones, you could
Um,
say.
but I am glad rage came up because I feel like that is also one of the like
Yes.
core things actually of Hera
Yeah.
and Juno is the
Yeah.
rage, right? When we go to the myths that we do
Hmm.
have written down, she is rageful, she is vengeful,
Wrathful.
she is so
Yes.
angry.
Yeah.
Right. And we already talked about kind of the like patriarchal simplifications of that, but that can also like when
It's
you're
just
in like
real.
Yeah.
yeah, it's so
Yeah.
real. And it's like, and then also like we talked about like people, who've been unseen and underappreciated and eventually like become rageful because of that.
Hmm.
Being rageful because your needs aren't being met in relationship, like
Hmm.
all of those sorts of things, like Hera and Juno transits can bring that up or what's going on in your chart. And also Hera and Juno can hold you through your rage.
Hmm.
And also when Lori and I were in Argos, I remember
Mhm.
feeling angry. I was so angry the whole
I
time
was just
there.
gonna say that.
Over, I don't even
Yes.
remember what. There was something that my partner had done that was bothering me that like now I'm like, whatever. But I like got to Argos and I was like, like I
Yeah.
felt Hera's rage. And it can be
Yeah.
really productive and helpful and supportive. But again, yeah, it's like you don't want to
You
blow
don't
a
you
giant,
don't stop at the rage. This is the
yeah.
thing. Like you
Hmm.
Yeah.
actually have to move through the
Right.
rage to the other side to hear what the rage is communicating and take action according to what the rage's communications were,
Hmm.
right? So it's like even just thinking about I don't know, like you get really angry, and through that anger, you realize that there's like a core relational or communication need that just hasn't ever been met, and it just has piled up, and now you're like bleh about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then you can identify like this thing, that is no longer a thing I can accept.
Hmm.
Right. Right.
And then you've taken action about the
Yeah, and it's
rage.
productive, right?
Yeah.
And that's
It's
the
productive.
Aries. It's the
Yep.
action, it's the rage and the action both, right? It can
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
catalyzing.
I'm
And
reminded
oh, go ahead.
I'm reminded of how like Hera is also a storm goddess.
Right.
And
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
like the squalls, like the big, like the sudden storms
Yeah, the
sometimes, but then
storms.
also just like, the rage of a huge thunderstorm on a coastline. Like
Mm-hmm.
you got to stay inside until the rage is done, but then on the
Mm-hmm.
other side, like maybe there's some damage in your garden, but you also have a full rain barrel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and like I remember that day at Argos so vividly too, because I woke up and that was actually the day my friend I was talking about, she had found out that her partner had cheated on her with several people, but they were in an open relationship, so all he would have had to do was tell her, but he still lied about it. And
Trash. Trash. Put him in the trash.
well, she did. But I remember having this thought because I was trying to convince her that like this was Juno and she needed to express her rage, and that was the day she finally did and like
Mhm.
snapped, and like
Mm.
I woke up to all these voice messages about it. And I remember when we were having our like morning circle, they were doing like yard work or something. It was so loud and annoying, and there were
No,
like
they were cleaning up from the
interruptions.
wedding.
Oh, is that
Ah.
what it
Because
was?
again, there was a wedding that had occurred.
Right. Oh,
And so they
that's
were like
right.
cleaning everything
It
up
was just
loudly and
loud.
obnoxiously.
Yeah. But I couldn't hear Jason. Like I just remembered being really annoyed. And then we got there and I just like separated myself. I hiked all the way up
Yeah.
to the top of that little mountain and I just started sobbing and it like didn't even feel like it was mine. It was just like the rage of like all
It
these
was like this
annoying
storm
pieces
that
in
had like
her
come
and
through you. Yeah.
yeah, but I felt so angry all of a
Yeah.
sudden. We got there and I
Yeah.
just was like, I want to scream and cry for her in a way that she like maybe couldn't or
I mean, it's
Yeah.
interesting to
whatever.
think about how long patriarchy has been
Yeah.
directly responsible
Hmm.
for massive quantities of unnecessary suffering.
Yeah. And
And that is
silencing.
and
Yeah.
is worth being fucking pissed about.
Hmm.
Yeah. And like
So,
the how long, because like the point I wanted to add too to the like image of Lori crying at this sacred site is that was one of the oldest sacred sites we visited in Greece, which like we visited a lot of old sacred sites. And the one
Yeah.
to Hera was one of the most ancient sites where Hera has been like
continuously.
honored and worshipped for millennia, and it's like high up above Argos, and you can just like this gorgeous view, and it's this really really ancient land, but it's like Hera
Hmm.
processes can speak to like incredibly
Mhm.
ancient old things that we have inherited that we're carrying
Yep.
forward as well.
That it's like
Hmm.
both the inheritance of what has happened and then the ongoing consequences of what has happened.
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm.
It's both. It's not
It
just, oh, I'm
is.
carrying around my grandmother's like old pearls. It's like
Right.
I'm carrying around my grandmother's old pearls, and I'm also carrying around the multiple generations of orientation of making sure you always own at least one really expensive piece of jewelry just in case you need to leave quickly and you need money that you can take with you that isn't just
Hmm.
money.
Hmm.
Because if you're wearing pearls, you can, or you can slip them in your pocket or whatever. It's like it's
It's
almost
something of
money.
value.
It's
Yeah.
not the
Hmm.
same as cash, but it can become cash,
Hmm.
Hmm.
right? Like
Right.
that's like the ongo that's like an example of like an ongoing habit of being, as well as like literally the inherited thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Knowing that you do have some sort of safety net if it's
Right.
needed, if it's
Or it's like there are other
necessary.
habits of being too, of just like,
Yeah.
women should always be very small because if
Hmm.
you're very small,
Right.
you can hide better, both
Yeah.
literally and metaphorically.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Like there's so many of these like little habits of being that are actually
Right.
inheritance, like expressions of inheritance.
Hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
like the smallness is such a an aspect of the people pleasing and the self-betrayal as well.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah,
like the
all
literal
connected.
like curve that
Shrinking.
so many women have. Yeah, like
Yeah, which
self
also comes into
shrinking.
breastfeeding, right? Like that's like
Yeah. The
it's
Right.
weight
so
on the
easy
front.
to do that when you're breastfeeding. You're
Shrink.
Yeah.
giving everything to
A
this other
shrink.
person. Yeah, 100%.
It's
But then
also
you're
like a
giving,
heart
It
protecting
is.
like
yeah,
posture.
uh-huh.
It
Well,
can
that's what
be.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, I see that a lot in like the medical astrology of like
Hmm.
Leos, like people who like start to lose their confidence. They start to shrink
Hmm.
themselves down, and typically end up with back problems or
Yep.
issues with
Hmm.
their spine because they literally curve themselves in because of lack of confidence or like a fear of being seen.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think there's definitely something about like not remembering you don't have to shrink to like be with the right person or like
Yeah.
what
When
in the
you're
right partnership, you don't
when
have
you're
to shrink.
I think I would go further. In the right
Hmm.
partnership, you get to blossom in ways that you weren't able
Mm.
to before you
Of
were in
course.
that relationship. And I don't just mean romantic partner. Like
Yeah.
with the right
Right.
friends,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
With the right context, you get to unfurl and open.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, I don't have to shrink. I just get to stay my same size. It's like, no, 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 you
Yeah.
get to get bigger
Hmm.
Right.
because you're with people who want to see
They're
not
gonna
just the
water
you
you.
that you are. They want to see more of you. They want to
Hmm.
see you, the thing that is you grow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's
They'll
beautiful.
they'll build you up.
And that brings us to Juno's symbol, which is the
Mm.
asterisk, like
Yeah.
astrologically speaking, it's the asterisk on top of the cross of matter. It's the star and the cross of matter, right? And
Hmm.
that like unfurling, that brightness
It's like a
is
flower.
that is the situation of like being in like the social fabric. That is the social fabric
Mm.
that is yours. You get to show up fully. You get to bloom. And the
It's
people around you
beautiful.
are blooming too, right? There's a garden metaphor in here somewhere.
Yeah,
I
that's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
love that.
Um, that feels like a really beautiful place to kind of start wrapping up with just with
Hmm.
our time and whatnot. Does anyone have any
Yeah.
final thoughts before we?
Um, I don't think so. I'm happy we talked about the rage.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad that
Yeah.
came up. It's
That
like,
that
oh
was
yeah,
a
then
note
there's
that I
this
was
face
like
and this face,
trying,
and
yeah.
so that was good. And we'll put all of Diana's info down below so that folks know where to find her. She has a number of amazing offerings and is an excellent astrologer, and I highly encourage going and just checking out what Diana's put out into the world. And then, as always, like if any of this has resonated with you, if you have Hera or Juno prominent in your chart, like please comment below or reach out to us on Instagram. We love hearing from folks and hearing asteroid stories and hearing how this is showing up for you, because that's how we also just learn more
Hmm.
ourselves about these energies. And yeah, just thanks everyone for taking the time to be with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any personal stories to share or thoughts and reflections about what we discussed in this episode, please comment down below or reach out to us on Instagram. And please come follow us on Instagram at ConversationsWPlanets, where we share forecasts and updates about the astrological movements happening in the sky, as well as updates about our episodes. The link to our Instagram is in the show notes down below.